If you saw it in the movies, that's what I was doing. We were in a car and I just jerked off the rearview mirror, just broke it off and threw it in and just raking lines of cocaine out on it. Like, just to show, I don't care about this car, I don't care about anything. I can do whatever I want, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And many times I almost went to prison. I mean, just streets, helicopters, I've been arrested like that. Semi-automatic weapons and banana clips. I mean, I really am lucky. The next memory I have, visiting the Renaissance Festival, we walked by this palm reader thing with a curtain over it, and so they're both, let's get our palms read alone. So against common sense, I gave him my right hand. I never experienced anything like this. He called himself a palm reader, but he didn't read anything. He wasn't reading a palm. He touched, and through the touch, immediately started on me. I walk out of there, after losing my composure at the stein of beer. I didn't want the turkey leg. I didn't want anything the Renaissance Festival had to offer. I mean, I was just done with the place, and this is where my whole life changed.
All right. I don't want to be weird or anything, but I thought it would be cool to kind of start out and just, since we're sitting down together, to just say, like, it's an honor to be your friend. I'm going to start crying right off the rip, but it's an honor to be your friend, and it's an honor to be, like, a disciple of yours. And we've known each other for a little over 2 years now, and feels like a long time. We've traveled the country back and forth a few times already together after seriously, just a little over 2 years. So it's been really fun, and it's been fun for me because my whole worldview has completely, changed completely, 180. I mean, it's been rewritten from beginning to end, and also step by step with how I look at marriage and what it is to even be a man, and like so many different little things, and a lot of things that I say and a lot of things that I'm going to be saying are things that were directly taught to me by you, and it's really ironic because some of it was right in here, where we're at right now. So it's cool, the location that we're at. And I know we're going to get into talking more and more about that stuff, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about, like, kind of how you started out, which I want to talk about the whole Renaissance Festival thing. I think that's like super cool.
Oh, so you want to go into like kind of my genesis, I guess.
Yeah, like how we got here.
I guess I'll address though like what you said first though, and like it's been my pleasure and my joy ever since the day that I met you. Like I felt a humility over you, and I saw the hunger in you, and and I was praying for somebody out there in an outreach, and I saw you standing there, and you weren't waiting for me, you were waiting for the Lord, and I guess that's what we've all been waiting for, right? We've been waiting for the Lord, and it's a shame that you have to wait so long sometimes, and I really love it when people can be the part of God's hands and feet and his mouth, and where he can flow through them through the gifts he's given us to the body. And I know a lot of people follow men and movements and powerful women of God, and I understand why, but like my heart truly is to introduce people to God, and to I feel like that's what discipleship is. It's to give them an encounter, show them it's possible, and then slowly release them over to their creator, their redeemer, their I am. He is the I am. He's everything that I've ever needed. But I feel like practically that's not really found, and there's gotta be a point of contact somewhere. There has to be a place where heaven and the Word of God meets earth. And I think growing up with a lot of theology and a lot of, I grew up in a Baptist tradition, in that tradition, has a lot of teaching and a lot of preaching and a lot of holy living kind of, it's good, but it lacked a lot of it lacked a lot of the presence of God. We had moments of it. We had caught glimpses of it. We felt the bond of it. But then we'd always go back to business as usual, which was basically, we're just gonna, teach and preach and do an outreach every now and then and go back to our homes and our jobs, and that's the main heart and focus. A lot of dysfunction, a lot of marital issues, a lot of like childhood trauma still residual within the families, and there'd be a lot of repentance within the church, and you would come and repent for it, but then it's like you're back to it again. There was no real point of contact for that change, and there's exceptions, but there's rare exceptions. They are exceptions. They're not the rule, and I believe that according to the Word of God, that the rule is like freedom from sin, Romans chapter 6, that the rule is that we all have received an inheritance. And, it's like we've received, this treasure in earthen vessels, that the power might be of him and not of us. It's like there's literally a power. There's literally a treasure. And so I read the New Testament. God led me to read it for 3 years straight, and I didn't go to the Old Testament because I was going through the whole Bible, and I felt like I should just stay in the New Testament. I kept burning through that, through a drama audio Bible. Everywhere I went, everything I did, I'd like listen to that. And the overall theme that I found was power and presence, like a presence of God with us, Emmanuel even. And all the Old Testament was getting louder to me while I was going through the New Testament, because I saw everything was mirroring and typifying, and it was just such a interwoven masterpiece of truth. And I really love how God invites us in, he takes us into law and trying to do it right, and go ahead, do the right thing, be the right person. And then over time, you're a failure. And I think that's what I related to with the New Testament, is like, I'm a failure. I can't do it. At Romans 7, it just had me. Wretched man that I am, who can deliver me from this decrepitness, who can deliver me from this death, from this failure? And it's like, on down verse, 24, I can't recall exactly, but I thank God that through Christ Jesus, there is a way. And as supernatural as the story I'm about to tell you, is this road to sanctification, this road to becoming what it is that he said we already are. And it's like, how to perform it, I find not, but I find it in the exact way that I found it the first time. And so the way that I found it the first time was my girlfriend of 6 years. We were living together. I had started a small corporation. We were traveling around the world a lot. We were partying a lot. Come from a very broken childhood, very a fatherless environment. Kicked out of my house with my mom. Just a lot of just riotous living, and just very lost, and grown up within churches, but then only having a mentor, like pretty much one mentor that really stuck with me. Never forgot him. He just took me out really for some food and to his work. He worked at a Air Force Wright Pat Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Showed me liquid nitrogen pouring on the floor, and it cleaned up the floor, all the little nodule. It was just really a kid's dream. Took me to an airplane store.
Where'd you meet this guy?
He was in the church. He was.
Oh, okay.
I came in high one day in the church, and we was out running around with the other church kids, and we run the streets of Dayton, and I had never consumed dope in the way that I did that day, and it got me so stoned that I could barely walk. And so I go into church in that state, and this man, he had let me help him in the tape room up in a little enclosed part of our church that we video recorded all the services. And I became a big part of that ministry. And I was able to hide up there because I didn't want to be part of the services anymore. I decided I didn't want to be part of that, even though I had actually been a child preacher. I preached as a child. I did a lot of evangelism with the children's groups, hundreds of kids, like preaching, winning them all the Lord. But like, my own self wasn't born again, didn't know the Lord. So
you're going into a church and you're way too high, basically. And in your mind, you're like, there's probably guilt, shame, condemnation, all that stuff, and you're trying to hide. But then this guy, like, treats you in a different way.
I probably didn't even feel any guilt or shame because I was so, like, done with religion and done with my own conscience. I was very angry. I was angry at my mother. I was angry at my dad for leaving. I was angry at the church for like misunderstanding me and judging me. I was angry at everyone. I was one of the most angry human beings you could meet. So the higher I could get, the better I was. I felt so angry. I would say I was even like enraged. And so the higher I got, the more I'm sticking it to authority. And so I come in high, like, who cares about it, you all? But then once I got around them, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get exposed. And then, I'm going to get kicked out of my house, so I go up into the tape room and I sit down beside him at the switchboard because we switch between, different cameras. And that was my job, to switch back and forth and to create different effects and stuff with the cameras. And I really enjoyed it. I was good at it. And he taught me how to do it, and I just took off. And he came up there, and I remember him walking into the room because you had to walk up the stairs, and I heard the steps, and I'm like, oh my gosh, here he comes. And I'm sitting there like I'm blitzed out of my mind, completely stoned, and he comes in and he sees me immediately and stops, and then I just kind of look at the ground, and then he sits down in the chair and he says to me, brother, are you okay? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just tired. And he's like, and he's just shaking his head, and he sits down beside me. And he could discern that I was freaking out. And he didn't never judge me. I felt a love come over him, and he just began to rock in his chair, and he was just like sitting there worshiping, and he's singing a like real soft worship song, and it brought so much peace to me, and I'm like, he's not gonna tell on me. He's like, I knew he wasn't. I knew he was compassionate, and I knew he came from a background of drug use and of brokenness and divorce, and I knew his story, and he never told on me. And he had discernment, and he knew about what would happen if I went home. Like, I wouldn't have got a fair shake. And from then on, I knew something was different about that guy. But everybody else, the enemy was, darkness was able to turn me against every other human being pretty much on earth. Anyone that represented the name Jesus, every pastor, I heard the pastor dropping F-bombs on the paintball field. I'm like, oh, you're out. I mean, I just was looking to disqualify anyone. I mean, if they had any shink in their armor, I'm like, you're not real, you're a fake, you're a phony. And then I basically got to a point where that was the only human being on earth that was a Christian that he couldn't do any wrong by me because he loved me. I knew he loved me because he did something that benefited me, not him. And I knew he got it all. He's intelligent. He saw past the facade that was in our home. He knew the trauma that we were experiencing behind closed doors. He knew that it was a mess, and he didn't want to add to it. And he knew that it wouldn't help if he told them, my mother what was happening. It would just cause another explosion and another more trauma for me to get higher the next day. And
so you probably were used to getting wrath even when you didn't deserve it. So to get grace, when you're going into church, and
I didn't know grace.
Yeah, so to experience grace like that was probably pretty impactful.
It was a new flavor. You nailed it. I didn't know that. He even told me a story about his kid. He said one day his child had done something wrong, and he said that he was getting ready to spank his son, and he said before he spanked him, though, he's just like, you know what, son? He's like, here, I'm not going to spank you. Here, take the paddle. He's like, spank me. He's like, I'll take your punishment for you. And he said his son just started crying. He's like, I can't do that, Dad. And he's like, that's what Jesus did for me, son. This is over, but like, you got to understand what God did for us. And I mean,
wow.
that it was beautiful, So it's like, From there, though, fast forward, I've gone out into the world, left out in there 15, 16 years old, got my license, went out in a truck, didn't even know how to drive it because I didn't have a father to teach me. I'm literally rolling down the hill, like in, the little town of Hillsboro, Ohio, trying to I didn't even know how to drive a truck, honestly. I mean, I'd driven tractors and stuff, but I didn't know how to drive that truck, and it's just a little different, and it just enraged me even more, just nobody to support me, nobody to teach me anything,
You didn't have what you needed.
I'm on my own. I just felt totally neglected, totally abandoned, and it just fed the fire more. It fed the fire to be excessive, to be, just find your own way, so I got that in that truck, even though I eventually found out how to, balance the clutch and, the gas to where I don't stall it, and then I don't.
We're talking about a manual now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, and it was a little S10, a little primer gray, and I didn't even have money for that. Nobody taught me to save for a vehicle. Nobody. I had no money. I had to I had a grandfather, which is really a blessing in my life. He I think he was a believer, but he definitely was an ethical man, and he loaned me a little bit of money to help me get this truck, and and out I go, just into the world. And I took the truck immediately over to to the probably the worst house you could go to, and that was where my life went from 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, all the way until 25 years old. And I will say there was a big change come in my life with the whole drug scene and everything. That's all another story. There's a lot of things I could say about that life. Have a lot of things that are very, very unusual that happened to me, and that I many times I almost went to prison. I've been raided by every. Just streets, helicopters. I've been arrested like that, where, with semi-automatic weapons and banana clips. I really am lucky. The way that it all worked out, very extreme in the selling powder and all kinds of really just large quantities, and dealing with people that are not the kind of people you want to deal with in areas in the capital of our state, and just really was dealing with people I shouldn't have been, and really could have lost my life so many times in jail and just being shot. But I remember after all this, and I was still selling stuff, and I was working construction off and on since 15 years old. So, my cousin picked me up, because I didn't have anybody to take me to work or anything. My mom worked all the time. My dad wasn't around, and I had a cousin that picked me up for work and taught me the construction trade. So I learned how to do high-end remodeling, and so I was on and off trying to keep things together. But really, the top level of intoxications the night before and trying to go in and do my trade, it was off and on. Ended up couldn't stay with him for terribly long, and but as I got into this thing, I couldn't work anymore because I'm just into a life of crime and a life of excess, and it ended up to the point where I lost everything. My car caught fire and burnt to the ground. Friend trying to wake me up because I went home, and I'd ran out of the car and ran home and just let the car burn, and he's trying to you go get your car, the sheriff's are about to come, and and I just let the car catch fire and burn to the ground. Lost the one thing I still had in my life. I'd already lost my apartment, already lost had a car repoed, just so many things that were being taken from me through excess. My life was crumbling around me. I had a little daughter. That daughter, with the drug dealers, the drug dealer's daughter, and just pretty much the worst place you could go to have a child, and this poor child, and at that point it's just the lifestyle that she was exposed to, and
So you ended up having a child with the drug dealer's daughter. Mm-hmm. Is that the house that you would hang out at?
Well, I hung out at a lot of houses. I was I was just always, I slept on a lot of couches. I slept at people's houses, lots of hotels, lots of, we were in excess. So we had lots of people with us, we always had an entourage. I mean, when you have that kind of product with you in excess, you have a lot of people hanging out with you.
So the money that was funding the partying and stuff like that, is that purely coming from like drugs and things like that, or is some of it coming from the construction that you
the construction started out really heavy, and I really learned that trade early on, 15, 16, 17, 18. I was working and partying a lot, but then about 18 is when I started really running too hard to work, and I couldn't work anymore. And so at that point, the drugs funded the excess lifestyle.
So there was a period where you did not have an actual job?
18 to 21. I had no job except for selling powder. And
you were sustaining yourself with that?
Yeah, we were moving half kilos and very large amounts of drugs from Columbus to these areas, and then we were distributing it out in smaller versions, and and then while we're selling it, you're doing it with everyone, and everyone's buying you drinks, and you're buying drinks. Like it's an excessive lifestyle, and it's like you have a lot, and then it's gone in a night. I mean, you literally you have $2,000, and it's gone in a night. It's just gone. And that was back 20 years ago. I mean, that was a lot of money, and so. That kind of lifestyle was I was sick of it. I was really just getting tired. I'm I don't like this life anymore. I just don't like it. I'm tired. I'm just tired of waking up all these girls and all this there's a hole in my soul, just trying to fill it. And I was I watch these movies, you watch most people know these movies. I'm not even going to say them because if you've never seen them, I don't even want you to watch them. Mm-hmm. But I mean, people know the movies. It lets you see that lifestyle in such a glorified manner, and I'm what? Nothing else is working out. Maybe this will work out, and then I just went all for it, and I felt so terrible.
Well, it's kind of wild too because the lifestyle that you're describing is that's what a lot of people's dream is to achieve that lifestyle of excess and the things that you were doing and the things that are kind of advertised to us by these movies.
It's exactly everything that you saw in the movies I was doing, all of it. Just figure it out. If you saw it in the movies, that's what I was doing. We breaking mirror, so much so when I remember we were in a car and I just jerked off the rearview mirror, just broke it off and put it in and just raking lines of cocaine out on it. Just to show, I don't care about this car. I don't care about anything. You know what I mean? We can do whatever I want. I'm going to do whatever I want. I mean, that's insane. You know what I mean? You're just breaking your stuff. Yeah, just a monster. And just to show, and then it enraged everyone else. And it would spread. You know what I mean? That spirit spread. And it was it got to the point to where I'm okay, I've milked this as far as I can. And sure, I can go ahead and move south and go down to, across the border, and we can go to nether levels, of course. But it's I've already tasted what this has to offer. This is a foul flavor. This is bitter. And as I was living this lifestyle, thing after thing, lost my apartment, lost the car burnt down. And then now I'm being told by my roommate that you have to move out because he says you have an indictment from the sheriff's department, and the guy that owned the house was my best friend's father. So the father owned the home, and we lived there together for a year, and it was my house. And he I guess has ties into the sheriff's department somehow. He had friends there, and he said that we were all being served indictments, and he said, I want that Dwayne, get him out of my house, get him out of there. I don't want him there anymore. So he kicked me out in one day, you got to leave. And I'm I don't even have anywhere to go. So I've lost everything. I have nothing. Literally, even a car, girls are driving me around now, you know what I mean, to get my stuff in Columbus, and I'm losing everything. And so
he was probably just fine with your lifestyle, right? in general. Like he wasn't telling you to straighten out your life. So he's okay with your lifestyle, but then when it gets to a certain point, which is kind of the conclusion of the lifestyle, then it's too much for him.
Yeah, they didn't stop doing what they were doing. They were still using, the friend I'm talking about, he still is using meth to this day. It was about that I was about to take the fall, basically for the fun everybody was having. And so, and they're like, off with you. Like, there's no space for you here anymore. You're too excessive. The thing they loved about me now, they're kicking me out for. And so my other friend that I was hanging out with, he's actually the one that introduced me to, the town that we're in right now. And he said, you can come live with me. He's like, you can just, I have an upstairs that's empty. And so I lived with him, and he's there with his wife, and he's running around on her, and they're just, one night he's banging, her head against the wall, throwing her against the wall, and next night they're like loudly, passionately loving on one another. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. It was like reminding me of my childhood, of like the chaos that was within our home. And I'm just waking up in the morning there, and I'm just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't like this life. I don't like any of it. I just want rid of it. I was just like, I had nowhere to go. I didn't want the church, because I'm like, I don't want that religion. I don't want that lifestyle. I don't want this lifestyle. I don't want the 9 to 5. What is it? It was very confusing for me. And
I have 2 questions real quick.
Yeah.
Do you believe that, because you being miserable when you have all these things, that a lot of people would say, oh, that's so cool, let's make a movie about it, let's make music about it. Do you think you were born again during that time? Like, do you think that was part of what was making you miserable, or do you think you got born again later after that?
Yeah. So, I know I wasn't born again. There's a process sometimes to come into Christ, especially for those of us that have grown up in a religious community. That religion can really, screw your soul up. It can twist you up because, pray this prayer, and I know that can be wonderful when the heart's involved, but there's a lot of strange individuals that are in charge of the youth groups, and there's a lot of influences that I would say, just from my standpoint in the culture I grew up in, that really delayed that experience of me seeing my filth and my sin. I feel like there wasn't a place for me to just be me and to see that I'm sinful, and for others to see that I'm sinful and to walk me toward Christ. Because it says the law is a schoolmaster, a teacher, to lead us to Christ, to lead us that we can't do it. And I felt like a lot of my youth within the church was people trying to reform my soul, do the right thing. And they have the theology right when they say it, but in practice they're trying to modify your behavior to please God. And I feel like the behavior should just be a teacher to keep saying that you can't do it, can you? You can't do it, can you? Look, Dwayne, you can't. You tried, didn't you? Oh, look, you know why you couldn't do it? Do you know why you're struggling? Because you're doing it. And it's like that. We're supposed to abandon ourselves and to become desperate for God again, and to turn from our selfishness, turn from our self-will, and to focus on Him. And that's not what I got, actually. I got that, willpower, do the right thing, a lot of me. It was mostly on me. And so that's where I feel like I didn't get the born-again experience. I never saw myself as helpless. I saw myself as this prayer that I'm about to do is going to do this, or, my endeavor, my effort somehow is going to make the difference. And in fact, I found that I had to come to the end of myself, and before I could be born again. And so this is one point that I was at the end of myself, laying in that bed, in the upstairs of my friend's house, having nothing of my own. I did have another primered gray truck, which is where I started out. I bought one for $500, and I was so embarrassed that I didn't even let anybody know about it. I parked it behind the barn of his house, because I was so embarrassed because I had such nice cars, and then now that's all I have. I would only drive it if nobody knew, and it was all about the image, and I had no identity. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who Dwayne even was. Like, who is he? Is he the guy that takes care of the needs, the guy that, like has the room in the back of the bars? Because I had my own room in the bar. You go in there and you exchange product, you leave some for the owner, and and it's just like there's a whole system that's behind the scenes in this world that rewards those that will take the weight and they'll take the risk, right? They're recruiting. This world is darkness is recruiting someone that'll take the risk, because somebody's going to take the fall. And that person that takes the fall is the one that gets all the credit. And that's the whole point of it. It's like you can have all this credit and all this notoriety. You can have all this glory, look at it. And then that individual, once they eat that and they consume that, the hook in it is that you're the one that takes the fall. You're the one that gets it all, and everybody walks away. Everybody else they're free. And I felt that. I wasn't arrested.
It's a trick. Straight up, like a bully at school. It's a trick.
I wasn't arrested physically, Katie. I was arrested emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was in prison. And I remember waking up in this morning, and this is one of my life-shifting moments. I woke up and I just said, what are you doing? You have a 3-year-old daughter that's at the drug dealer's house. And he wasn't a huge drug dealer. He was like on and off, but like nonetheless, the culture was there. She's there. It's not where you want your child. What are you doing with your life? What is your life even? How does your life even matter? Like, I don't want this life anymore. If there's just some other life other than the ones that I've seen, but I don't know what it is. I don't know that life. I just want out. I want out of this life. It wasn't a prayer, but it was a cry that God heard from heaven. And I actually met a girl right after that. And this girl, she didn't know she had a call of God on her life. And that I did too. To free the captives, to set them free. And to be a mother and a father, to many people. But I met her, and she was broken, and I was broken, but she didn't like drugs. And, every time I would get on drugs, I got on heroin one night, and she said, take me home. And she found out, like, we rolled up to a gas station, and, this car with blacked out windows rolled up and smoke rolls all out of it. And, and they're like, Dwayne, come get in, and then my now wife, she gets out, and they go inside to get more beer because we were out just driving around and running around, and I got in the car with them. And so when my now wife and friends got back in the truck, I came out of that car and got back in. And what had happened is they had had a mirror in there, and they had railed out some heroin, and so I just did heroin with them, and then got back in the truck with the people I was running with that doesn't do drugs. And so now I begin to become under the influence of that narcotic.
Yeah, like a different person getting back.
Oh, it was a different person that started to cut. And then she's like, what's wrong with you? What are you doing? And then, and I just told her this is the lifestyle I live. I've been living this lifestyle since 15 years old. It's no big deal. I'm not addicted to it or anything. This is just what we do. And she's like, no, I told you I don't want a boyfriend that does drugs. And so she left me for, I don't know how long. It was no longer than 3 days. But, she came back, and then I'm like, okay, I got to kind of put this underground. I wasn't going to stop, but I definitely felt the pressure. And then also all the women we was hanging out with and the entourage and all that, it was not really fitting well because I'm falling in love with this girl. And then she's she's tolerating 3 of the girls, but then I started seeing the 3 girls were getting jealous of her because they saw I was, really falling in love with her. And what I saw is I just started seeing a shift. There was a shift, and I was shifting out of that drug culture and out of that, hey, Dwayne, let's, go get some more stuff. The very people that are telling me to stop selling and you're going to get busted are now saying, can you go get more? And I'm like, I thought you wanted me out, and I thought they were after me. And, and it's just man, they just want what they want. They're just, no one's looking out for my best interest. And so I'm like, if they're going to be that way anyway, and, and they said I had an indictment, and they said I was about to take the fall, and they're still wanting me to head to, to Columbus to take care of their cravings. They don't care, but this girl did. She liked me, and I liked her a lot, and we ended up falling in love, and we ended up, I ended up trading the drugs for a new drug, alcohol, and then a love life with this girl, and a love for money. So I started a business at 21 years old, and the business started 6 figures like the second year, and we just started.
That is wild.
We started making lots of money and started traveling to Hawaii, Cancun, Jamaica, Bahamas, we're just spending money.
So you went from working when you were young to not working for a little bit to just starting your own business?
7 days a week, I would work, and then, then the next week, I'd take a whole day off or whatever, and just go blow money and party. Just had to blow the steam off, because it was like the stuff inside of me I could keep it down so long working, and then the stress of work and just everything that was in me, it would get too much, and I'd have to just go. I'd run away, and I would run away to the bar, and we would just excessively drink until I couldn't feel anymore, until I felt like I had nothing left in me, and then I would be so hungover the next day, and I'd have to go to work like that, and this was the perpetual thing, and just traveling to places to party, and I started, just kind of like, man, this is getting old. Like, same places, same thing every weekend, and I guess it was 4 years-ish, somewhere around that time period, 4 years of doing this kind of lifestyle. It's accepted. I'm hanging out with businessmen. I did a big job for a corporation and met a bunch of their corporate executives, a lot of wealthy guys. So we're hanging out the bars together. They're pushing around a lot of money. They know a lot of people, introducing me a lot of people, and it's just plugging me into, the people I needed to really make money. And it was all accepted. The partying, the running around, and I see her, I have this, wonderful girlfriend, and I can't even marry her. We're together for 6 years now, and I can't even marry her because I can't be faithful. We're partying, running around, the whole lifestyle still. But it's somehow accepted in society. It was like, this is what you do.
That is so uncommon to go from being a person in that kind of lifestyle and things to jump into a business and have success like that, because usually you don't have the type of character or the type of self-control or the type of organization or or to be able to go and go to a meeting on time, the potential client, and handle yourself well, and for them to trust you.
Sure.
How does that happen? How do you go that, because that's very, very unique right there.
Yeah, so I would say, I grew up on a farm, when I was young, and I did have responsibilities, and I would say feeding the pigs and having to be up certain times to do certain things, and that structure definitely put something in me. And then also working for my cousin that picked me up at 15. He was kind of like a father to me. He was very harsh at that time, which later he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was so rough on you when you were young. And I'm like, really, I was fatherless, and he helped shift me into he put a voice in my head of saying, yelling at me saying, you're late, and all those things. And I watched him build his business, and I watched him coming from, no real money or anything. I watched him start his business, and I watched it grow. And he started a business at 16. And by the age of 3 or 4, he was building a 3-story house with a pole barn the size of, the thing was massive, 100-foot pole barn. It's just 2 stories in it. I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it. You know what I mean?
That's
and
huge.
I told my aunt, I said, I want to start my own company. And, she's like, well, you can't just start a company, and, you got to have insurance and da-da-da-da-da. And I just took all that like a challenge, I can do it, and it just put fuel on the fire. And so I had that in me still, although it was paused for that period of the heavy, that dark, I would call it my darkness, the dark part of my life, where I just from 18 to 21 darkness, and that was a pause on everything. I don't have a lot of memories from that time period. Did a big toll on my body.
It's kind of cool though, man, because it's like you grow up and you don't have the father that you need in your life, but you have this time period where you're working with your cousin and you're seeing what he's doing, and like us as coming up as young men, like, as kids, as boys coming up, like we are like sponges. And like, so to be around somebody that's doing something, somebody that's working, that's running a business, answering phones, using tools, showing you how to measure stuff, how to cut stuff right, how to figure out the angles and all the different things that you're learning. And it's like, we're just like made when we come up as men to like just sponge this stuff. So and like you're picking up any kind of gold nuggets that you can find because you got nothing.
You're noticing everything.
Yeah, you got nothing. So you're getting it all, and it's like better than probably an 8-year college education. Yeah, it's real life. It's really how do you actually do this thing. You're right. And you're seeing somebody else model it for you. The character. How do they talk when they answer the phone?
You're right. I think everything you're saying is it's totally on point, and I would say that my cousin, he probably gave me more of that than anyone in my life. I would say like watching his success. I would say I modeled myself after him, really, and I did, and so here I am, doing well, but yet at 25 I noticed a very clear defined point, and I would say what marks this moment is in the moment was I had that 3-year-old daughter that now is 8. I was 25. She was 8. Her mother was now on drugs, which she wasn't when I was on them. She was now on drugs. She left my daughter with some lady that I didn't know for a week. And my daughter's calling me, "Hi, Daddy, and where are you at?" And she's telling me she's with this lady. I'm like, "Who is this?" Like, put her on the phone, and then I'm like, "I'm coming and getting you right now."
You're probably in the middle of a big job or something, like probably busy, and then like this
you're dead on. Yeah. That's exactly right.
And you're like, "What do I do?"
Yeah, exactly right. And so we would get her from time to time, but it was such a toxic situation. It was like we'd get my daughter, my girlfriend and I, now my wife, and we'd get her, and then for the weekend, and then we try to take her back, and then she wouldn't answer the phone, she wouldn't be around anywhere, and I don't have a babysitter, I don't know where to take her, and I've got to be to work on. We have big projects we're running on Monday morning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And it was like such a bad position because I want to see my daughter, but then I don't have the setup to see her half the time because I don't know. Some days I couldn't get her back to her mom till Wednesday or Thursday, and so it's like, how do you navigate all that? You can't just tell clients whatever. So for me, unfortunately, my relationship was very fragmented with my daughter because of the terrible toxic scenarios that were at play. But at this point, I had asked for custody of her so many times. Why don't you just give her to me? I can, because I had bought a home. I was stable with finances. Wasn't stable emotionally. I can tell you that because the partying and the excess, and I couldn't even get marry this good girl. But yet I was definitely more stable. But she never would. She wouldn't have it, and so. Finally, I found the moment, like that sliver in time where I can get her, and there's nothing that she'll be able to do. And I told this lady, I said, listen, I'm gonna call on you in court if I need to, because I'm going to get custody of her, and you just tell her mom whenever you see her, whenever she does show back up, that my daughter's going to stay with me. So from that point on, she stayed with me forever. She was. I got custody. My wife ended up adopting her, legally, and all those things. And my wife, she was young. She was a very young mother. She's young 20s, and she had no idea what she was doing. An 8-year-old, it was like just throwing her right in the frying pan, And here I am, now I have a daughter. Oh my gosh, I don't know how to raise a daughter. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know anything about life. What do I even tell her? All the questions that are going to come up. I already know all the things that I didn't know and still didn't. And now I'm like, I'm going to have to look a child in their eyes and be like, I don't even know anything about anything. And, that matters, that I know that's coming. And I just knew that inside. That I should somehow provide that. And then I started soul searching, and I thought, I want to grow my business bigger. I want this thing to grow bigger. I had an aspiration to have a jet and all these other, I was just really trying to push myself to another level by focusing on, a goal, right? And then just applying myself in, and I stopped listening to television and radio, and I read these books about being a producer instead of a consumer. My whole life shifted, and I started thinking different. And I started noticing like all the advertisements and all the influences in the world, and I'm like, they're very similar, and they're all very, they're engineered, they're designed for they're creating a direction, a trajectory for all humanity, actually. And I noticed that pattern, and I'm like, where are they being corralled to exactly? Because I noticed like overall humanity was being led in a direction, a very clear direction, and I'm like, where's that destination exactly, And then I was like, I ain't following this. I don't want to, but what else is there, right? Like, I don't have another option. But I clearly saw that I'm not following. I'm going to find a new way, a new path.
That's pretty cool, man. It's a cool place to be, because, like, I just love how you can see that you have a few tools, You didn't have a dad, didn't have a lot of things that you needed, and you made a lot of mistakes, but you had a certain set of tools, like, you had some experience, and you used that. Like, you didn't just go and just say, what kind of business do I want to start, and just go with this. I'm just going to go start a convenience store or something. It was like, you had experience. You saw somebody do something, and you had the tools, a certain set of tools, and then you had motivation with your daughter, and you just did something with what you had. You used what you had. You didn't listen to naysayers, but you used what you had, and then you started to learn. You started to open your mind and to think. It's like, that's so cool, man, because a lot of people will just get stuck in just kind of like a victim mentality. I didn't have nothing, so
that's true.
And not do that, but for whatever reason, even before you're really diving into God, like there's some cool things that are already happening. The table's kind of being set. Like you just said, you had a house. You're able to go get your daughter, get custody of her because you have a house. Why do you have a house?
Yeah.
Because you used the tools that you had in order to provide. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean that you were born to be in construction or anything like that. Or like the most passionate thing you could ever be passionate about is construction. Taking a house and improving it or building an addition on it. But you use that, you're providing for your family. And I just think that's really cool to do, because I feel like there's something in culture. It's like, it's got to, if you're not doing art or whatever it is that just really piques your interest and gets you really, crazy about something, then you're just being a failure, or you're following something and you're wasting your life.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, that's not true, because even though you might not have enjoyed every day, there was character that was being built in you on the job site. Even when you're hungover or whatever, like you're learning things. And you're learning how to do it, but you're also learning kind of the character that it takes. Yeah. So there's character that's built, and it's still like blessing you through your life.
It's very true. It's very true. It allows for more opportunity. It allows for you to have more choices. And so I had a lot of choices, but I didn't really understand, that direction. And so I felt like I was just kind of primed in that point where I took my daughter into my life there. And our plan was that because I was a high-end remodeler, a builder, and then my wife was a licensed cosmetologist with already built up clientele, our plans were in one of the wealthier parts of our community. We were going to build a salon, and that was the plan. I was going to design, she was going to design it, and then I was going to build, and then we were going to own the salon, run that, and then, we'd have these two companies parallel, and kids weren't in the cards for us. We were planning, we had Sierra, but, my daughter, but that was pretty much, that was the trajectory, until we had an encounter with fate. And the way I was thinking, just to give you an example, the last time I remember going to a bar, I remember sitting at the bar over in the corner. I was over in the corner. Everybody's dancing, drinking, same song, same drink, same blah, 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 blah. I'm tired of it. I've seen it all at this point. Every single dance move, even as fun as they could be. I'm just tired of it. I mean, it's just the same flavor. I want something different, and I can't do this anymore. It's now become vain to me, where it doesn't produce a new thing. It doesn't do what it used to do for me. And so I'm sitting in a corner over there, and I'm like, I remember this one friend of my wife's, because we're hanging out with all these cosmetologists now, because my wife's a cosmetologist, so there's all these, once again, just tons of ladies all over hanging with us, and I have one girl that'll like hear like my passion, and she's like sitting there all drunk, and I'm telling her, I'm like talking like there's got to be more, and I'm like talking about business and about motivation and about going for it, and like just sharing these ideas, and I don't know what was going through her head, but like I wanted inspiration. I wanted to do something with my life. I didn't want to bloat at the bar anymore. And that's the last night I remember going and partying like that. And I remember the next memory I have is visiting the Renaissance Festival, a little festival we had in our area. And going there, and I had a stein of beer and a turkey leg, and have my daughter, with us here, and then my girlfriend, now my wife, and then my now mother-in-law, and we're all together. We're walking through the Renaissance Festival, and we walk by this palm reader thing with a curtain over it, and I grew up Baptist, so I was like, walking on paths, we don't do that. You're gonna get ripped off, or like
should I even be here with a palm reader here?
Yeah, it was kind of like maybe there's some real stuff, but I'm not gonna find out because I know there's all bad news. It's all bad news. Well, my girlfriend didn't feel the same way, neither did her mother. So they're both, let's get our palms written on. I'm like, y'all do what you want. Sierra and I, we went off, my daughter, and we went and we started going to the sword fighting thing. We're down there sword fighting, each other, having fun. And but I got a call on my phone for, my girlfriend wanting to hook back up with me, and I answer the phone and she's crying. And I'm like, what is going on? Are you all right? What's going on? And then she's like, he told me about my brother that died. And then he told me this and told me that. And I'm like, where are you? And so we connected back, and she's emotional, very emotional, shook up. She's like, how does he know this stuff? How does he know this? Like, knew as a cosmetologist, knew this. And I'm like, I don't know. And I'm thinking like, well, I got to have some kind of answers here, right? Like, I've got to figure this out. Like, I want to like know. And so I'm like, well, I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And she's like, well, they were closing. And I'm like, well, I can get in here. I know I can. So I go up and I start negotiating at the door, right, with this lady. And I'm like, just go back there, talk to him. Like, and finally I got myself in there. And like, he said he'd do one more. And so I sat down on the table. And as soon as I sat at the table, I immediately went right to business. I was like, how do you know what you know? Like, where did you get it? Where did you get the information? And he's like, well, I hear voices and I see pictures in my head. And I'm like, what, you got like a movie going on in your head or something? Like, what are you talking about? And he's just like, he laughed. He's like, well, that's somewhat the way it works. He's like, but yeah, I will see faces and I'll see things, and the things will go through my mind, and I'll hear things, and I say it, and it just, that's the way it is. And he said, I've lost 2 relationships, fiancés, because when we had hugged, as soon as I touched them, I saw them with someone else, and I confronted them about who's the guy with the such and such hair and this and that, and it was they were cheating on me. And he said, I'm single still, because of this gift. And he said, but I don't think he called it a gift. He said, because of this thing I have. And so he said, well, enough about me, this is about you. And I'm like, yeah, but well, is it good? Is it bad? Like, what is this thing? And I just wanted to know. And he's like, oh, there is no good. There is no bad. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Like, that doesn't even make sense. But that was his theology, right? And so I didn't really believe that. I didn't really believe that I could trust him. Like, I could just feel some kind of a weird, like, vibe in there. It was just the spirit of the whole thing was very, you know how you have a sense about people and a sense about places? The sense that I had, honestly, sitting in that place was darkness. I just felt like this isn't good. This is not a good place. That's exactly what my sense told me. And I had pretty decent street smarts. I was living by that. And so that was actually what it said. But the fact that this information was being conveyed through unknown means, I have to know. So I pushed past that, like, I shouldn't be here, and pushed into this. And then he said, give me your right hand. And so against common sense, I gave him my right hand. And I had been to many parties where girls are doing palm readings on my hand, and it was more or less a flirtatious kind of,
looking at the lines.
Yeah, it was all like they were flirting is what it was, just touching your hand, and stuff like that. And I never experienced anything like this, because when he touched me, he didn't read he called himself a palm reader, but he didn't read anything. He wasn't reading a palm. He touched, and through the touch, immediately he started on me. He described my company that I had running it. He described the way I was as a leader. He described the man I had running my company. He was an ex-Marine. I had a working project manager. He described his haircut, body build. I had just went to Hawaii, and when I came back from Hawaii, this man had hired back in somebody that I had already fired, and he had paid him the rate of pay that the guy was making, which was half of the cost of what he was worth. And he stayed at home and had this guy I'd fired come back to work, and he stayed at home, like, on the couch, like we're both having a vacation. And so I'm like really ticked off. I'm having issues with this guy, and he's telling me about the issues. He's telling me he's not running things well and all, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is very specific. And so, but then he goes even further than that. You have an ex, and then you have a daughter, and then you guys have a bad relationship, and there's a lot of back and forth, and it's like, and then just goes through a lot of things. And if I recall properly, it was saying things about my broken childhood and about all the things, like the trauma and everything, and I was just getting blown away. But I still have my composure. I could stare people in the face. I have a stone cold, like
playing poker.
Yeah, I had a pretty good poker face, which I've lost most of that now, honestly. My face is almost a billboard at this point, but I had it all just staring him down. And then this point, though, I lost it. I lost the composure, and he could see my eyes like freaking toast. I was fried, and this is where it was. As I said, I was reading books, and I wasn't watching television, listening to radio, because I was so focused on growth, development, that I was reading a book about sales and it was on my nightstand. It was sitting there, and I never read books before. That was a totally new experience for me. But he said, "Oh yeah, one more thing. Don't focus on about all that sales. Sales is just numbers." And he said some things about sales, and it's like I have the book on my nightstand was all about sales. It was my obsession. And then I'm like, oh my God, now this creep you're in my bedroom, get out of my bedroom, man.
Because he didn't know nothing about you. He didn't.
Oh, I didn't give him my license, or I might have. I think I told him my first name. And so, even my now wife, she didn't tell him. She didn't have I'm a stylist, and her hair was moderate that day. She could get some pretty wild hairstyles kicking, but she didn't have the purple hair kicking like she had at times, and crazy, they go to those Vegas shows and stuff, and hair shows, and they get pretty spunky, and she was conservative that day. And to my memory, I was just trying to put all that information together. And so we have 3 people now. Even my now mother-in-law, she had been told about her son that died, and she was unconnected with my wife. That man didn't know that they were together, that they were related. And so the fact that he told my mother-in-law even about her son that died and told her about her business and her health. We have 3 situations now that I'm now looking at. I'm looking at, there's things that are known that shouldn't be known. And I walk out of there, after losing my composure, and they hit me up immediately, well, what'd you think? What was that? What is this? Is this real? How do they know that? And I'm just I don't know. I was feeling dizzy. I didn't want, the stein of beer. I didn't want the turkey leg. I didn't want anything the Renaissance Festival had to offer. I was just done with the place. And this is where my whole life changed, because the most wild thing is that day, my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, we had this photo shoot that we did at the Renaissance Festival. Maybe it's a common thing at Renaissance festivals, but there were 2 caskets. They were wood, like coffins, old-fashioned coffins. We both laid in those coffins together and got our picture taken. And it was symbolism for what was about to happen. Because my life was about to change. Something was about to die, and something was about to resurrect. And what happened after this was, it was a quiet ride home, followed by a night of sleeplessness, which wasn't common for me off narcotics. Short of narcotics, sleep come easy for me because I worked a lot and moved a lot and very active person. And so I couldn't sleep, though, and it was just mental. And I was just agonizing, and I'm organizing in my brain, like trying to file things away like a clerk, and I'm like, okay, I have these files I have to file. I can't just say it never happened. Now I'm stuck with it. So what are you going to do, Dwayne? Like, how are you going to digest this information? And so I'm like, okay, let's organize. Okay, get it together. It's like, okay, first of all, 3 people, you've never been alone, ever, never. He's mentioned in different points in your life, there was nobody there that you could see that observed it. However, it was observed. And then not only was it observed by different points in 3 people's lives, but then it was recorded. So now we have an observation by unknown things that we can't see, and then we have an unknown recording of things we can't see. So we have observation, recording, then we have in some organized fashion some person that obviously had massive issues. I mean, it was a very dark place, but he was capable of pulling that out in an organized fashion and bringing that information into this realm. And so I'm like, well, this isn't the physical world, because in the physical world, he would have to be told, he would have to read it. There's some way he would have to get that information. And here now, this is another place, this is another dimension, this is another world that I can't see, because there's no logic, there's no reasoning that can explain, there is nothing.
At that time, there's probably not even Facebook that he could have looked at, even if he had time to go sneak away and get on the internet.
No, this is 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's no drones flying around.
I think I had a flip phone. I think you could text if you pressed if you press 1 3 times. I think you can get a C. Yeah. But anyway, so we're in another place with technology for sure. I'm sure having hoax is a lot simpler at this point. So now I'm like, okay, you got to digest this. So you're talking about a spiritual world, Dwayne. This is a spiritual world. It's not physical. What do you call something you can't see? What do you call a whole other world? It's a spiritual world. And I'm like, now what? So the spiritual world is real? I've never been alone. Never. There's something looking at me now. Every moment there's things in the room. I don't know what they are. I don't know how this works. I mean, I can't see it, but it's there and it's real, and I have to accept it now. And so I started pondering this. I'm like, wow, if this is an organization, this is if there's a spirit world, then in a world there's organization, and within organization there's players, and within players there's a leader, and within a leader there's a God. I'm like, oh my gosh, there is a God. And I'm like, and I know there's good and evil outside of what that guy was trying to tell me, everything's the same. He was trying to basically say it's all gray so that he could fit his occupation within good, really. I mean, honestly, because after each one of us left, this is what I want to say. Every one of us had a curse spoken on us. We all were told we were going to die in a crazy accident.
That's what I was going to ask you
about. And it's
yeah, okay.
Every one of us were afraid. I was afraid. Is this really going to happen? Whoa. And I even told him, can I stop this? Is there something I can do? Each one of us left that place in fear. Fear. Not love, not confidence, fear. We were terrified.
And I've heard about, when that happens, that bad things actually do happen. from those curses. So,
well, I'm sure I can make it happen if I start freaking out enough, gripping the wheel while I'm driving. I don't want to die. I'm going to die in a wreck. I better be careful today. I mean, you're surely going to wreck.
Like today, you would be like, you wouldn't probably be doing the same stuff that you were doing, but like, you could say like, I reject that, in Jesus' name or something like that. But at the time,
right. Yeah, I'm blessed and not cursed, and so it's like I don't know what you're talking about. I mean,
what I'm saying is there it seems like there was a grace there for you, that you were protected, even before you knew about all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole point is just to live in fear. Honestly, I think that it's like the fear of the unknown, because if you're alone in this life, it is scary. And you don't have a path forward, like we're talking about with fatherlessness and growing up in a neglected state. Like it's a scary thing when you don't have someone to guide you when you're alone, And so I think fear is the natural, organic response to life in general. Like everything's scary if you don't have an answer, if you don't have hope, if you don't have like the understanding of how you're cared for and how you're just nurtured. And so at this point, realizing though that there was a God, this was a massive revelation in my life personally. I'd say at this point agnostic. I would say that I was not atheist, but I was definitely agnostic. I wasn't sure. Very much into science and things, very well studied on all that. I spent a lot of my spare time, honestly, like pouring into like the research on the cosmos and on the molecular level stuff and the genome and all these. Like I loved science, and science to me was confusing because they had a narrative that I couldn't make it work still, because I saw they were still having faith, but it was like should I have faith in like science's religion, or should I have faith in the religion of the Bible, which like how could that all be, right? And so, but at this point, I'm not in a place to like call any shots, because at this place now that I'm realizing that there's a God, I felt a fear come over me that day that I have never had since. And that fear, there was a fear of God come over me, and I'm just like, oh no, like there's a God.
Do you think there's humility that came kind of naturally with experiencing something that you didn't think existed, like the power of, you could call it that?
Well, you're fragile. You feel out of control. You feel unlearned. You feel like a student that has to take a test, but doesn't even know the questions on the test. You just feel like very vulnerable. And I was very vulnerable. And at this point, though, I felt afraid, because I'm like, I've never like sought you. I don't even know who you really are for sure. And like, I've done a lot of bad things. And I know there's good. I knew that. I knew there was good, and I knew there is evil. That was very clear to me from a logical standpoint. There's good and evil. It was very logical. I mean, history taught me that. I mean, you can't read history and not realize there's just darkness. I've heard what has happened to humanity, and it's really ripped a hole in my soul. And then I see the good. I see like the way someone can change the world. And I've seen this in history. But I mean, one person can change so much of the world. And so to me, it was very clear that there's good and evil. And so to me, like, it became very obvious that God would be good, because there is good and he's in charge, but evil would be a resistance against that which is good. I don't know how I had it all sorted out. I'd say it's my biblical foundation, but I definitely, I had an understanding of that. And I had an understanding of it. In this moment, you now stand before God completely guilty. Like, you have nothing to stand on. You are guilty. You're guilty of being ungodly. You're guilty of being unattached and uninformed of who you are, what you are, and where you belong. And I had no clue. And I felt like I was going to be going to a bad place. And I wasn't 100% sure about hell or heaven or any of that at that moment. I am now. But at that moment, I didn't know. But I felt hell right in that moment. I felt hell. I felt dipped into the flames of it. I felt darkness like knocking at my door. And I felt a way out. I felt like there was mercy there for me. There's like, I felt him inviting me in. I felt the God of the universe inviting me into something that was true, something that was real. And so when my girlfriend got up to go to work, I got up too, but I didn't get up to go to work. I got at the end of my bed on my knees, and I said, I don't know who you are. I don't know if your name is Jesus, God, Jehovah, Mohammed, if you're, Buddha. I don't know, and I don't really care. But I can tell you one thing. Whoever you are, I want you. I want you, and I want the truth. I want you to show me your name, and I want the truth. I'm sorry for who I am. I'm sorry for what I've been and what I've done. I mean, I just knew that I was altogether, not okay. I knew it was me. It wasn't just what I'd done. I knew that it was me. I'm just a problem in general. I'm broken. And that was obvious to me. And I just completely collapsed in his arms, whatever that means to anyone.
You're at a perfect point. Yeah, I think this is the perfect time to take a break.
Okay.